nice, refreshing Coors Light inside. I'm keeping it cool while I drink this one.
And welcome to the Downer Front Podcast.
Yes.
Finally. DownerFrontPodcast.com. I am your host, Warren, and with me, with all my best friends, lots of people. We're excited. We're pumped. Finally get a chance to talk about The Last Jedi, the newest Star Wars directed by Rian Johnson. We're so pumped. I mean, this movie has been getting so much fame. I have literally been dodging so many trailers all year. I've already seen it twice, so I'm really pumped to really unpack this. But before we get into that, I'm going to toss it over to some of my best friends and say, the beautiful mouth of the South. Rylan, how's it going, man? What you been watching? What you drinking?
Home of
Good
Memphis.
evening. It is, well, not the home of Memphis, but Memphis.
Rylan is the home of Memphis.
I'd be a very big person. But right now, I'm just drinking cool, refreshing H2O in a giant thermos. But what I've been watching recently is Jean-Claude Van Johnson. It's a new comedy series on Amazon Prime. And it's a lot of fun to watch. I think it's a really, really dumb show, but it's really cool that they take Jean-Claude Van Damme and have him make fun of himself in so many ways. And it's very meta in its humor as well. So, like, it's Jean-Claude making fun of action movies, making fun of action movies that star Jean-Claude, and making fun of, like, spy films as well. There's, like, so many elements of that. They're just throwing random humor to all these things that we kind of grew up with, and it's now good to see them just parody them through just some six quick, easy episodes.
Are there a lot of Bloodsport references?
Mostly Time Cop.
Mostly Time Cop?
There's a few Bloodsport references. There's definitely a few Bloodsport references.
Yeah, there are a few, but Time Cop definitely is a key part in this series. But it's a lot of fun to watch. I think everybody should give it a chance.
Well, as always, great to see your face, and thanks for having. I'm really excited and interested in getting your thoughts on this. Let's toss it over to the host of Fear Bonus itself, Andrew Abbott. How's it going, man? What you sipping on over there? What you been watching?
It's good. I think I got a fear boner right now. This is a lot of handsome gentlemen on or around my computer screen. I'm sipping on Bud Light because I haven't been drinking as much cough syrup these days. And I just finished Bright, the new Will Smith Netflix original film. It was actually a lot better than I thought. I was pretty excited for the movie, but it was better than I thought. It's kind of like Training Day meets Dungeons & Dragons, and there's some pretty good humor in there. You get, like, kind of classic Bad Boys Will Smith back. Like, you know, he's been doing some other, like, shitty movies recently, but this one's pretty solid. So if you get a chance, if you have Netflix, check it out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing a lot about this movie, and it just came out today, so I'm surprised everybody arguably had the day off and everybody watched it. Well, I think that's kind of strange, but I was like,
I was like 30 minutes and it was
I
great.
don't do shit.
Oh, there you go. That definitely makes sense. And also, that beautiful, beautiful voice that you heard is someone who hasn't been on the show since Beauty and the Beast, I believe. I think that's the only episode that he's been on.
Is it the only one?
Yeah. We have Dylan here, and I'm super excited to talk about this because we did talk about this for arguably about 3 hours the other day. But Dylan, what you drinking on, and what else have you been watching?
Well, I got a nice Rocky Mountain Cold Coors Light and 2 Rocky Mountain Cold Coors Lights. So sometimes these last a while. Last time I went through like a baker's dozen just in the podcast. But I've been watching. So recently, I just finished. Well, I guess I finished it like a week ago. But I watched Future Man. It's on Hulu, I want to say. I'm pretty sure it's Hulu. I don't think I've watched a show faster than I watched that show. Just because I just thought it was hilarious. Every bit of it was just funny. I love it.
It was surprisingly good.
It was so good. And you watch the first episode and you're like, okay, well, what the fuck are they going to do with this? And then it's so many dick jokes and hilarious 80s jokes. the music in it is so good too. I really loved it.
In the very first episode, you get to see Josh Hutcherson blow a load on some dude's leg.
Yes.
What?
Yes. Ralphin, I think you in particular need to watch this show because I think you would it's really funny.
It is, yeah. I thought it would be shitty, but it's
that.
good.
It's the kid who plays PETA, right, in Hunger Games?
Yeah.
It's like...
He's also Denny, right?
You don't think that kid could be funny, but he's so awkward and hilarious in this show. It's great.
I mean, I'm excited about it. I know I started watching it, but then I stopped and then started watching other stuff. But I'm definitely seeing, especially when I'm watching and binging things through Hulu, tons of advertisements. There's tons, like, they literally is like a commercial about it, or at least on the side of my computer. So I'm definitely going to see if I can give it a shot, especially if you guys have liked it. So thanks for coming back. I'm excited to get some of your thoughts for tonight. So what's up? I have the beautiful Mike, the guy who looks gorgeous, literally 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Mocha Mike, how you living?
That's me. I'm living good. How's it going, guys? Good to see all of your beautiful faces.
What you sipping on and what you been watching?
Well, as for what I'm sipping on, I decided to run with the samurai aesthetic, since we're talking about Star Wars, and I'm drinking an entire bottle of Shochikubai Nigori sake. It's unfiltered, and it's super tasty. It's dry and sweet and very cold. And I imagine I'll be pretty fucked up by the end of it. So, tip to that. As for what I've been watching lately, I've been going through a lot of stuff. But I've recently caught up on Marvel's The Runaways, also a Hulu show. I was really excited when that came out because I never really read the comics back in the day. But I was just interested in seeing what kind of content would come out from Marvel that wasn't part of Netflix. And it's actually been surprisingly good. I assumed it was going to be like super CW style, like teen show, and it definitely has some of those vibes, but it definitely takes itself seriously. It's telling an interesting enough story so far. And the cast is all really good and really, like, they all really look like the characters from the comic books. So it's been cool. Also, there's a velociraptor in the show. No spoiler alert. But they didn't use CG for it. They actually used practical effects. So it actually looks like the original Jurassic Park whenever that thing is on screen. And it looks fucking dope. So I've been surprised with it. Yeah. So it's been a good ride so far.
I was worried that I saw that show and I was like, man, this is going to be like a Marvel Degrassi.
That's exactly what it is.
It's going to be so bad. But I'm glad to hear you say that.
I mean, that's kind of like what the series was when it came out. Was Marvel's Degrassi. And being like, oh, fuck our parents. Ugh.
I mean, it's no Punisher, but like the first episode, like some girl nearly gets date raped at a party. Some dude gets shot later on.
Nice.
Like, it takes itself pretty seriously. So.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So it's an Aerosmith music video.
With dinosaurs, yes.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's worth checking out if you're a big Marvel fan. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, so of course, definitely great to have you on. We missed you the last couple ones, but I'm excited to see your face again. I'm going to toss it over to the other beautiful Michael, the Shredder. Blewitt, how's it going?
Less beautiful Michael.
The less beautiful Michael, the Shredder.
True. That's true.
Blewitt. How you hanging?
I'm pretty darn good. Been watching nothing too great. Watching Craig Ferguson stand up. That was interesting. He talked about doing drugs a lot. It was an eye-opening experience because I didn't know that people from Scotland did anything else but drink. As far as what I'm drinking, segue. That's called segue in the business. Just a nice little glass of whiskey. No thermostat full of booze tonight.
Thermostat?
No thermostat in this house.
Yeah, how
no
cold
chugging
and
mercury.
warm
Cold
is
as shit here. Oh, man.
Well, it's always great to see your face. So thanks for coming to hang out. And I am Warren. I will be your host. I've been watching a good amount of stuff because of my staycation. Literally too many shows. But I do want to talk about this one show that me and Guillermo were talking about called Easy on Netflix. Has anybody seen the show yet?
Nope.
No.
Would you say it's an easy watch?
Oh, it's a definitely easy watch. It's 30 minutes. I think the first season is 8 episodes. The second season is also 8 episodes. So it's very quick. But it's like it takes you into the lives of these people that just so happen to be living in Chicago. But it's all in like it's all in one universe. And so as you just kind of progress through these lives, it's a comedy, and they just talk about different things, different relationships that they explore. Of it's I'll try not to give anything away, but it's definitely something I would suggest to watch. It feels like a Judd Apatow show, but it's not. It's actually from a guy named Joe Swanberg, who actually hasn't done anything else. He's been in like a couple different things, but I think this is his first sort of directing debut. And the cast is crazy because you have Dave Franco's going to be in an episode. You have Omar Bloom?
Orlando Bloom.
Omar Bloom?
Omar Epps.
No, you're the one watching
Orlando Bloom.
No, sorry, I was like, Omar Bloom sounds weird.
Omar Bloom.
Omar Bloom for The Wire.
Yeah, I can't tell.
So, I mean, the cast is absolutely crazy. It's like really star-studded cast, but they play these really, really down-to-earth roles that nothing's kind of glorified. So, if you haven't seen it, it's going to be easy on Netflix. Season 2 just came out. Also, I've been catching up and saw Red Oak Season 3 that came out about a month ago on Amazon Prime, so definitely go check that out. But we're pumped. We're going to give you a small intermission. When we get back, we're going to go right into the nitty-gritty, like all spoilers, everything. We're going to talk about all the ideas and really unpack Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. So we'll see you in a moment. We are the Down in Front podcast. We're going to unpack and talk about our wins and things that we really liked and loved about it. And I'm going to toss it over to the mouth of the South. Brylan, kick us off and tell me about some of the things that you actually like about Star Wars.
So I would say the big thing I really enjoyed was taking the idea of the Force and bringing new elements and new ideas into it. So thinking about like how we've been told and shown for the longest time, it's always about the light versus the dark and the light versus the dark. When ultimately, in order for there to be peace, those things either have to kind of coexist and balance each other out, or they can't exist at all. And I thought that was a good idea of how to kind of go forward with ideas of the Force and just add a different element to how you think Rey is going to approach using the Force more versus how someone like Luke did. Speaking of Rey, I thought she was still a fantastic character. I really dug like her astral FaceTiming with Kylo Ren and their back and forth banter that they had. It was really cool because it wasn't just about the mission. They also showed like their youth and their immaturity as well during that time.
I like that. That was something like very new that we just hadn't quite seen before. We've seen it like people talk to somebody off screen, or back in the older movies, we've seen the actual projections of Yoda and stuff like that, especially of Obi-Wan, or like a voiceover. But never have we seen that particular kind of connection, as if they can like see each other. But they also had a really smart way of doing it, because they were always looking off screen, but you can still feel that there's tension there. So I thought it was a really great way of using that.
And just having them do it across galaxies, I mean, that just adds to like, hey, these are two Force wielders we have not seen before at their levels of power. So they're getting into like Vegeta and Goku power levels now.
Over 9,000
Metachlorians.
But
oh my god, I'm so glad that they didn't mention Metachlorians.
I was so nervous. Luke was
close.
For a split second, when they're like, "What is the Force?" I thought he was gonna say it, and he's like, "No, it's ambiguous," which is how it should have been.
Waving that tree limb at her hand, he was just like, "It's a Metachlorian getting up on you." But also, those two had like one of the best like lightsaber fight scenes with the Snoke's Imperial soldiers in the throne room. That was so badass. Just how they used the lightsabers in a different way. It wasn't about having fancy choreography or anything. It was like two people working together and trying to find the best way with their weapons to fight off these really professional badasses too.
That was by a wide margin the most badass fight scene in all of Star Wars history.
Everyone shit their pants when he just turns on the right and just skull fucks that dude. Holy hell!
I personally love the.
I was really hoping they were gonna have the soundtrack be Duel of the Fates. That would have been awesome.
My favorite part in that fight was when Rey spins around the guy and pulls his his saber chain or whatever down and pulls her own lightsaber through his chest before running off and fighting someone else. It was so freaking brutal. You don't get that kind of brutality in any fight in any other Star Wars movie. Not even close.
You got the one guy that got fell into the vent and was vaporized.
Oh, it turned into guts and stuff.
My personal favorite move was the Winter Soldier knife drop move that Rey had, where she was locked up and then she's just boom! that was so cool. Sick. You could see her realize what she needed to do, and she's like, "Oh, I got this."
But it was just a little out of character for her. It made more sense that Kylo was a little brutal, but for me, when Rey was getting all in those guys' guts, I was just like, "Oh, damn, girl."
I don't know. Every time
Rey's a scrapper.
Last movie, she just fights to live. Every fight she's in, she's an underdog.
She's definitely a street fighter.
And this is the first fight that we see her in, arguably, right? Even in episode 7, she fought against Kylo, but that was still, she was really new to it. Even when she was wielding her stick and she fought those two guys that was trying to rob and steal BB-8, she was pretty brutal in that very short fight sequence. So
yeah, she kicked all their asses.
Well,
it was nice to see her grow and be all right, she can take the next step. And I think it also kind of ties into a bit of what Luke had seen in that just rawness of power of it's not the dark or the light, it's just is sort of thing. So
I was gonna say
Robin Thicke blurred lines in between.
I was gonna say she goes right to the dark side. That brutality is very much right there, a part of her. That as soon as that switch is flipped, she doesn't even look back. She just enters for Spider-Man: Homecoming. Was it kill mode? That. So that.
Why do you even have that? I'm a teenager.
That darkness just kind of sits on her shoulder.
For Spider-Homecoming.
She can She can tap into that at any point.
Good, Ron.
Yeah, one thing I really like that's really cool about that scene is it kind of solidifies that this trilogy is about Kylo and Rey, and just to start off that scene with. You were given this idea of Snoke being this big bad behind the darkness and everything, and that he's going to be the final confrontation. And then all of a sudden, Kylo just pulls a lightsaber through him, and he's done for. His death is hey, you're not really anybody. This is about things beyond what you even can comprehend, which I thought was badass. That Snoke was actually an inconsequential character. I thought that was actually a brilliant move that they did.
Yeah, I love that. I also love the fact that for Rey, one thing that's really constant about her character in these movies is that she is always ready to make throw the first punch whenever she needs to. We saw it when she charged at Kylo Ren in the forest and got Force thrown into the trees, and we saw it in this movie when she was face to face with Snoke and they took off her bracelets, and the first thing she does is try to grab that lightsaber so that she can kill him with it. Obviously, it doesn't work out that way, but she's pretty damn tenacious, and I love her as a main character. I think she's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. One other thing I really liked was just Luke's fallibility, and just consistency with the saga on who Luke is as a character. So, in Return of the Jedi, for him to beat Darth Vader, he has to tap into the dark side in order to actually vanquish him, and he pulls himself back at the last second. And it's really cool to see that even that he continues to train himself after that moment and feels like he can pass on the teachings to other students, that he still is a fallible character in that fear. He will feel fear, and he's going to have those moments where he may lapse into using the dark side of the Force in order to get some things done with his whole flashback with standing over Kylo and ready to kill him because he just feels that pull that Snoke has over him so strongly. And it's really cool that they continued that part of Luke's character into this movie and didn't make him like a perfect hero. It was really cool to see that, yeah, Luke made some mistakes and everybody's kind of paying for it, and he's got to make a decision on how he can redeem himself, which was really nice.
I love that look at Luke, too, as a failed master, because, for anyone who's watched all the Star Wars movies, one of the running themes is that the flaw of every Jedi is hubris causing them to fail. It's happened for every Jedi throughout the entire series. And for Yoda, Luke's only masters were old Obi-Wan, who'd already learned his lessons and only had a few days with Luke, and then Yoda, who'd been in exile for years and had already become a different person than he was in the prequels. So he never got to see great Jedi like Yoda or Obi-Wan have their failures. So for him, all of his role models were perfect examples of being a Jedi. So it makes complete sense that he would feel such an extra crushing guilt when he does start to falter and fails as a master, because he doesn't have that actual knowledge that this is a thing that goes on with Jedis and they fail and they come back from it. So it's cool to see how devastating that was for him.
He probably thought he had, his destiny was to just be a grumpy old man wearing rags. That's probably from seeing those two do it. He's like, well, I guess might as well.
Follow in their footsteps.
Yeah, monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah, and as for some newer characters, I thought Benicio del Toro's DJ was really cool. Growing up with Star Wars and playing Star Wars video games and everything, there's this whole idea of what a slicer is, and there are computer hackers / underworld data traders in Star Wars, and it was cool to see a slicer actually portrayed in a live-action film finally. And I thought the DJ character brought some really interesting elements, and I hope we get to see him in the next film if he's not burnt to a crisp or anything.
Yeah, I didn't like the character after the second view. I know we'll probably kind of get into that, but I know at least he kind of mentions or kind of talks about and brings up a lot of the things that we tend to forget of. The Han Solo character did a lot of stuff that wasn't good. It definitely wasn't bad, but it was kind of this weird kind of gray area. And I think I'm really kind of brought that back up to light of, hey, this is, those people, he's like, oh, this person's from a bad guy. Finn says something like, oh, we stole this from a bad guy. He's like, well, I mean, technically, they're almost one and the same. This person's selling parts from the Imperial, the First Order, as well as the Resistance.
So my final win will be just some great Star Wars visual moments are created in this movie too. First and foremost, I think Admiral Holdo's shooting the carrier through light speed into the Snoke ship. That was one of the best scenes I've seen in a movie in a long time. But also liked moments where you see Yoda pop up. First time since the end of Return of the Jedi. This Return of the Jedi era Yoda, the old Yoda, pop up and give some words of wisdom, or seeing Leia's original message to Obi-Wan was definitely very emotional for me. And that final scene with Carrie and Mark Hamill, where Mark kisses her on the forehead before he faces Kylo, was really cool.
Yeah, that was a really beautiful send-off scene for Leia. I wonder if that was intentionally shot in that way, but originally just for Mark, and it wound up being kind of for both. Or if it was I don't know, a reshoot or something, but yeah, it was beautiful.
I love all the points that you necessarily kind of made about that. I did not expect to see Yoda, and I was freaking out when he came up. But I was like, oh, but then what kind of Yoda are we getting? Oh, we getting the original, kind of sort of crazy.
OG Yoda.
Oh, the puppet. The puppet.
Oh yeah, the puppet. The puppet was brilliant.
Yeah.
It was so perfect. I sat there, was like, yeah, this is so well what they're actually doing, and he still came to drop some knowledge on Luke of you're still. He calls him young Skywalker. He's like, you have so much to learn, man. You still have so much to learn. And just him being in the movie is an absolute win for me.
Yeah, and even though he's dead, he can still burn shit down.
Oh, that was.
He brought the motherfucking thunder.
He has a tiny Mjolnir hammer just like ready to go.
Did everyone catch the little Easter egg at the end in the Falcon
Mm-hmm.
with the books?
That was a
Oh yeah.
Did everyone catch what that meant Yoda said earlier? I didn't catch this the first time around. I had to read it and then I caught it the second. So what he says to Luke right before he calls the lightning down is he says, "There's nothing in that tree that girl Rey doesn't already have," because he knew she stole the books. Which, I mean, again proves that he is just the wisest creature in the galaxy.
Yeah, he's great. But the books, read them, have you?
Not page.
I'm going to start a book club with Yoda.
There's this fan theory.
Yoda reads the younglings.
There's this fan theory going around that Luke Skywalker is illiterate because he was raised on a oyster farm and he never had the chance to learn to read, and that's why he never read the Jedi texts, because he doesn't know.
That's why he just looks at him. These books are pretty.
Why?
I really hope that's the thing.
Oh, man.
But yeah, you good, Rylan?
Yeah, I'm good.
Let's toss it over to Dylan. Give me some of your wins and things you liked about Star Wars.
I had to think about it a lot after I watched it, because I was really thrown off, like, in the theater, just because everyone watching it was pissing me off, clapping and being noisy and interrupting the whole time. So I think that kind of like set a hard edge for me. But I mean, first and foremost, as is in every Star Wars movie I've ever seen before, the music was super awesome. I really had a fun time just listening to the movie. My next biggest wins were really focusing on the relationship between Kylo and Rey. There's so many different things that I thought the movie was going to go into, and I thought it was really going to just focus on Luke the entire time. And I think the best part of the movie was maybe that everybody's wondering what is going to happen. Is Luke the Last Jedi or is Rey the Last Jedi? And then none of that happens. And it kind of just has its own little twist to it. I think that was what has kind of made me change my mind about the movie a little bit after seeing it. I still need to see it again. And I only want to see it. I don't want to see it in a movie theater. I want to see it sitting on my own couch. Just because I'm a terrible person like that. But I really liked the bridge, that to me was probably one of my favorite parts of the whole movie. When they bridge Rey and Kylo, and it's just oh shit. And then when you find out it's Snoke, I was also oh, that's pretty cool too. But I have a lot more losses than I have wins. I'll say that.
For the bridge, that was a really cool, I think, storytelling device. Giving these two characters who had no reason to do anything but try to kill each other if they were in the same room together, and giving them not only a space to have a conversation, but also a conversation with no other people involved whatsoever. Just fully neutral territory, and they could actually start to get to know each other's sides. I thought it was a brilliant storytelling maneuver.
I legit felt like Rey and Kylo were doing an exchange journal together.
It was like space Snapchat. They got a few minutes here, a few minutes there.
Yeah, it was awesome.
And Kylo gets to bring back high pants.
Also, another shout out to Rey being a badass. She, the first time she sees Kylo Ren in her vision, the first thing she does is grab her gun and try to murk him. No words, no hesitation. She just immediately tries to murder him.
She really is a brutal character. The more you think about
put
it.
a shirt on, you freaking hippie.
Could you wear a tunic?
And I mean, it goes without saying, the fucking fight between Rey, Kylo versus the Imperial, the Supreme
Security guards.
First Order.
Snoke Small Cops.
Yeah.
That may be one of the best fight scenes in a Star Wars movie ever, in my opinion. Ever. It doesn't get a whole lot better than that. And I mean, when Kylo kills Snoke, I mean, you can't sit there and be Oh, I knew that was going to happen. No way you knew that was going to happen.
So, one thing...
And the only time you knew it was going to happen is when you saw Kylo just, like, moving his hand, and you're like, oh, shit, what's he doing? Oh, shit. Oh, shit. Oh, shit. He did it. And you lose it. And then the whole movie theater just lost it.
Yeah, I like the hubrisness that Blewitt actually mentioned, because that was something that Snoke was also doing, because he just felt like he was all powerful, like nobody can defy him, nothing can actually touch him.
He was getting his nut off in that scene. He was like, yes.
That's just
Am
how
I the
Andy's...
only one who, like, I want to know, did they ever explain, like, why he's all fucked up like that? Like, in my fan theory, I believe he tried to make moves on a female Wookiee and it didn't go well. And that's why Snoke's all messed up.
I heard a fan theory that he was
just really ugly in real life.
He's not ugly. He's just British.
He's got a bad teeth.
I
heard a fan theory that Snoke was actually Dak from Empire Strikes Back after he got crushed in the snow speeder.
That's awesome.
Oh, man.
Andy Serkis, though. Come on.
He's all over the place.
He does everything.
Did not realize that was him at all. Of course. I mean, I don't ever do, but that made me go wrong.
Yo, Dylan, two things.
What?
One, I really like that we didn't have, like, wiener, like, ballet dancer lightsaber battles. Like, you know, you watch the prequels, like, the original trilogies, whatever, they didn't have the CGI to be able to, like, do it. The first fight between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader is, like, the worst sword fight in the entire trilogy, but it means, like, the most. Maybe second to most.
It's just so PG. They made it so PG.
Well, but, like,
Jedi shouldn't flip.
The prequels, everyone was, like, flipping around, doing all that crazy stuff. Like, I love that Rey is clearly very untrained and not very graceful. I think she can get to that graceful-esque thing, but Kylo Ren looks like a medieval knight wielding a longsword. Like, he hunches over and he kind of, like, swings the thing around like it's heavy. You know, it's not a freaking light thing.
He's like one of the trolls from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, seriously. He's just, like, kind of pure power. The second thing I say is that I think John Williams does two things remarkably well. First of all, he develops a theme, unbelievable. That dude, there's so many times that he just interwove a theme and, like, changed it around, flipped it around, and made it something new. I love that you got the Resistance on, like, high woodwinds in this to kind of show its, like, innocence instead of, like, the low brass when it was first introduced in Force Awakens.
Yeah, it's dark.
Yeah, the second thing is I think John Williams does amazing battle scenes where he'll just, like, kind of create a tapestry of sound, and it kind of everything swirls in together on itself, which that one immediately goes into what he did to buck trends in this third one, which I think every single person wrote this one down, so we might as well just get it out of the way now. He had this huge kind of swell of just all these different instruments playing all these different lines, and then all of a sudden he cut it. And you saw a Mon Calamari cruiser go through an entire First Order fleet. And that moment of silence was maybe the most brilliant thing they did in the entire film. Literally, both times I went, there was like 7 or 10 people in the whole theater that were just, shit. Like, no one yelled. No one, like, it was like this very reserved, like, oh wow. Like, it was that.
That was not my feeling of that scene.
What do you mean?
I thought that scene should have gone completely different. But it will go into misses after this.
Interesting.
One more quick point to what you were saying, Dylan, about the... Fuck, what were you just talking about? Oh, yeah, how them killing Snoke so early was kind of a surprise and a twist. Something really cool that they did from a directing standpoint was when Kylo turns on the sword, the camera's on Snoke, and you see his face react, and he looks down, and you see the lightsaber through him, and the camera pans back and focuses on Rey and Kylo, and he goes out of focus as his torso falls over, and the camera never refocuses on him again. Instead, it stays on Rey and Kylo while the fight starts. And it's amazing because it adds from like an actual cinematography standpoint that same notion of like, yeah, that's a fucking twist.
Yeah.
Deal with that shit.
And then it happens, and then they murk all the fucking guards, and then 10 seconds later he goes, all right, we got the new order. Let's go.
So fucking good. God, what a masterful scene.
Oh, yeah.
Dylan, any other wins?
I'll send it to the next one.
Okay.
Let him hit it.
All right. Abbott, talk to me.
Yeah, a few of mine have already been hit. Yoda, that scene with Yoda is hands down my favorite part of the movie. The fact that they went with a puppet rather than a CG Yoda was amazing. I feel like that was very integral for Luke to kind of come back from the edge, because like I can't imagine how long he's sort of been essentially on his own, and then all of a sudden he's dealing with all this stuff, and you know, he's kind of has this grumpy old man moment, and Yoda kind of comes back and centers him, and he's talking with the little puppet, and that was huge for me. But also, they just, even though it's like a long movie, they managed to jam so much into the 2.5 hours, so that it has a moment where it does feel like a very long film, but then you're like, well, shit, what else could they do? And in my opinion, I know someone earlier said that it feels like you're left with a lot more questions, but for me, like, a lot was resolved. I can't. I'm not saying they should make a third movie, because I know it's going to happen either way, because I'm not, in Lucas Studios or Disney or whatever. But for me, I was very satisfied with that film. The New Order kind of running away with their tail between their legs, and the rebels kind of scattering. It's well, this is kind of like a clean slate, like a clean board. We have some new players on the field, but otherwise, what are they going to do from here? I don't know what the next crawl could possibly say. So that's kind of exciting. And then also all the new creatures, whether they were practical effects or CGs, like the porgs and the ice foxes, I thought they were all beautiful and really well done. Nothing was dumb. Even the Canto Bright horse, giraffe, dog things were really cool.
I was gonna say human-faced kangaroos.
Yeah, the faces were a little disconcerting, but I think all the creatures in this movie were really cool. I'm a big fan of creature design and creature effects and things like that. And I thought everything was really successful. And everything was fun to look at, except fuck those stable kids, those little poor stable babies. I hate them. They exist and they stink. You guys know my stand on children in movies.
They stink and I hate them.
Yo, this will show you where my mind was the whole time. So when they go to the stable the first time, they open the door and the little kid goes to hit the button, and Rose goes, no, wait. And she goes to show him her ring, and she opens it up, and it's the rebel insignia. Yeah. I was sure that when she flicked that switch, it was going to be a blaster, and she was just going to kill him.
Like a poisonous dart or something. Or just
and when it didn't happen, I was like, oh, man, I guess I'm just a monster.
Well, those were most of my highlighted wins. You can move on to the next jabroni.
Okay. Next jabroni I have up here in my list is a Michael Moreno. Michael Moreno, tell me some of your wins you had about Star Wars: The Last Jedi.
Yeah, so a lot of things I've said have already been, or I thought about, have already been touched on, which is cool. But something I really want to point out is the fact that this movie was just visually striking in so many different scenes. We all know how cool the Planet Crate looked from the trailers, right? White sand that gets that shows red underneath, just looks awesome. But Snoke's headquarters, his room, was absolutely jaw-dropping. It looked like an art gallery or a place where a fashion show would happen. Just this long row of just red, nothing but red, with Snoke in the middle in his gold outfit. It was just it was visually arresting and and just took my breath away. But yeah, visually it was just a beautiful movie. Canto Bight, even though everything that we saw of Canto Bight kind of flew by quickly since they were running around, it was all really gorgeous. It was essentially another cantina scene, but just an upscale cantina. But it was still really beautiful, and all the creature design, like was said earlier, was just fantastic and really, really unique. Also, the film was a lot of fun. A lot of fun through and through. Even when things were seeming pretty dark, there was some levity or some moments that can make you happy, and for some people, that was a turnoff. But honestly, if you're a longtime fan of the series and moments of levity annoyed you in this movie, then you don't remember the trilogy, the original trilogy, because the original trilogy was like that too. They had funny one-liners and moments of levity, even when they were being chased down by the Empire. So if having funny lines in this movie pissed you off, you need to get your head out of your ass. But for me, it was a good time. It was really fun. I also really appreciated how they planted so many seeds for the future. Not only in sort of like the theme for this movie was letting go of the past in order to find strength in the future, and we saw that with so much. We saw that with the rebellion getting almost completely wiped out. We saw that with Luke Skywalker dying. We saw that with Rey being told that she's not part of a special bloodline, which, who knows what the ninth movie will bring. But all these things are telling you, hey, like, let go of those things that you've been holding on to for the last 40 years so that we can start telling new Star Wars stories. And I love that. I love the fact that the little kid we meet in the stable is Force sensitive. And they're just letting you know that the Force didn't just awaken in Rey in Episode 7, but it's awakening in the universe again. I'm really excited for what the future of Star Wars is gonna bring for us after this trilogy ends. And yeah, like speaking about Rey and those characters, I love the fact that they took so many chances to depart from the obvious paths that the story could have followed through. This movie, since 7 came out 2 years ago, there's been endless debates between friends and online about, who could this person be? What's going to happen in this movie? And every single chance they could, it seemed that they were just like, nope, fuck your fan theory, and fuck your fan theory, and fuck you. And they just did their own thing the entire movie. And I think that got under a lot of people's skin, but I loved it, and I think it set a really cool tone for the future.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, like when Kylo tells Rey about her parents. And, fans are going to take this either way. They're going to either accept that as the actual truth, or, they're going to look at a skeptic eye until they need, two valid sources to confirm that or something. But I hope, part of me kind of hopes that this is the truth about her parents, because we got to remember that Skywalkers aren't a long bloodline of famous Jedi or anything. Anakin was a slave, and Luke grew up as a farm boy. That Star Wars is all about heroes coming from humble beginnings. And what better way for the hero of this trilogy is to be someone that's from humble, ambiguous beginnings and is not connected to these legends of the past, that the person carrying on the legend is of the unknown, is from the crowd, is not significant in any way.
Yeah, and I should say too that I'm definitely one of those people who had fan theories. Like, I was a big proponent of the idea that Rey is a granddaughter of Obi-Wan Kenobi and that she's a Kenobi. I would still be super stoked if they actually said that, but I think it makes Rey really cool. And again, I don't trust Kylo Ren by himself. He has an agenda for convincing her that she has no parents, because he wants her to fall to the dark side.
Or go to prom with him.
One or the other. But I am the fan of the idea that, hey, she's nobody, but it doesn't matter because the Force is in everything, and you don't have to be special in order to be powerful in the Force.
Mocha, I like that. I'm going to add on to that fact because it really builds off of a lot of the lines that Kylo has been saying, and it wasn't until my second go around of watching this movie he basically said it was basically out with the old and in with the new, and that's what the Force Awakens had started talked about, and we see elements of Han Solo dying, Chewie getting hurt. Things aren't quite happening like we think a typical epic story happens, and then it's then expanded upon in this film of things that fan theories wanted that didn't happen. A lot of people wanted Finn to be a Jedi. When I see that there's a lot of these things, they wanted Finn to be just as powerful as Rey. But why? This is a completely original, or trying to be an original story that they're trying to do. And I like the fact that they're saying, hey, those movies already happened. We don't need another emperor, a Sith, a Lord Sidious, because we already had him. So get rid of Snoke, because why? He's going to do the same electrical powers that we already seen. But give me something different. We haven't seen this sort of torn apart, really tempted, he's not entirely sure of himself. Now he is the leader of, talking about Kylo Ren, now he's the leader of the First Order, or whatever their new name's going to be, but he's still divided. And arguably, isn't that that's what they're supposed to be, the Force and the Jedi's, they said the most powerful thing is having the balance between darkness and light. And if he's torn and he's divided in between of his father and his mother and trying to be on the dark side, that makes the most powerful being. How they talked about that.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that I don't know. I think it's an exciting and fresh kind of direction that Rian Johnson has taken with this movie, and I get why it upset like longtime fans. But if you're a longtime fan of Star Wars, then that means you probably started watching this in maybe the 70s, 80s, maybe even early 90s, which means that you were a younger kid when you watched it, and other young kids from this generation deserve their chance at a new Star Wars story too. So screw you for sending Rian Johnson death threats. I'm excited about all these new directions we're taking the series in.
Yeah, for sure. Let me toss it over to the other Michael Blewitt. Tell me your thoughts.
Yo, what's happening? So, I think Mike just touched on pretty much like all of my points in kind of the exact order. I think the one thing that I'd like to say is that this felt like George Lucas's original vision of Star Wars, where he wanted to make a space samurai film. I mean, literally the lightsaber fights from this looked like old Japanese movies, with them facing down and like saying mystical things at each other, about family and honor and stuff, and then swinging at each other with swords. It really visually was amazing. One shot that I don't think we mentioned yet was Luke force meditating after he comes back from his astral projection, and you just see him just sitting there with some Buddhist phrase 2 feet off the ground. It was like one of those things that you'd find in like a book of like Star Wars art. I thought that talking about that, I really did enjoy the whole leaving the past as well. I really think that Rey is kind of the MVP of this series, kind of pivoting off that, but where Finn was amazing and Han Solo were amazing in The Force Awakens, and without Rey, Finn was really lackluster in this, and obviously Han Solo's dead, so whatever. But in this movie, I think that Kylo Ren was remarkably better in this film than he was in Force Awakens, and that's saying something because I really liked him in that. And then Mark Hamill's Luke was unbelievable in this. I was enthralled with everything that guy did. As I think Warren was saying before, how the Jedi have, or Bryland, how they have fallibility. Her kind of youthful innocence gave him it gave him a platform to be kind of this bumbling master around, which I absolutely loved. Back to Kylo, I think you're right that they really needed to put a hard stop on what Star Wars was, because I think it really showed what Star Wars can be in the future. I mean, clearly they're going to do a 9th film. They've already announced they're going to do an additional trilogy with Rian Johnson completely at the helm. Star Wars is going nowhere. If they could up it to a Marvel-like schedule and give us 3 Star Wars films a year, I bet they would.
Anything else?
No, I'm good.
So everything has been said. I'm not going to retread on anything. I'm going to try not to. I think the best thing I liked about this movie was it did go back and talk about the fact that I think even the prequels talks it, but I'm glad that they went back, and it was more on a psychology and sort of a mental state of you. At one point, you can't keep running, and you have to face your past. I know that Kylo has this thing of we have to kill the past and let's start new. We're gonna have to go fresh, but before you have to start fresh, you do have to face it. You have to come to terms with what happened in the past, whether Kylo is trying to kind of block out the fact that he actually had a loving family, or maybe he didn't. Leia was out fighting wars, Han was doing his thing. I think me and Dylan talked about this a good amount of basically his deranged father figure was Luke, and the only person that he looked up to at that time betrayed him and wanted to kill him. And I really like that element. I love that scene, especially because we visit that scene multiple times. The first time we see it, it was in Force Awakens. The second time we see it, we see that, this is Kylo's version of what happened. And then the third time we see it is actually the truth. And that's a really powerful storytelling of coming back to the same idea of what actually happened.
Do we know it's the truth?
Well, no. At this point, yeah, because this is what Luke said. I had a moment of, doubt, it passed in a fleeting moment, but that was it. And I was left to seeing a scared little boy in his eye, with his eyes, and that was it. So Luke wanted to kill him because he saw what could be possible, and then changed his mind, but it was already too late. So
can we trust Luke?
I mean, that's a good point. Possibly. I mean, have you ever seen any reason why we can't trust Luke?
He tried to murder a little boy.
But everybody did.
Yeah, I mean, that would put him on my top row.
He literally said he wanted to kill a young boy.
Yeah, but so did his father, so he's just following his footsteps.
Can't trust him either.
Mocha, you just said earlier how you wanted to kill a young boy, so I can't trust you either.
That kid had it coming. He was a threat.
Physically accosted.
So the Last Jedi is actually Pennywise the Clown.
Oh, okay.
That would be a hell of a crossover.
It's cool that you brought that up, though, Warren, because that really is cool from a storytelling perspective, right? So there's that old saying where there's three sides to any story: your side, my side, and the truth. And regardless of whether or not we got the full truth from all those different perspectives, it's clear that no matter what happened, no matter which side of that is correct, it is, even if it's just a misunderstanding, it is an irreconcilable situation. Like, even if Luke wasn't trying to murder him, if Kylo thinks that he was, then that's not a situation that they can get over. Kylo can never go back to Luke and accept his apology because he feels like he woke up in bed one day and this old man was standing over him trying to stab him with a laser sword. And it's great because it just creates this chasm that can't be breached. And that's a kind of, drama or set of tension that you usually don't see in stories like this, especially with hero's journey stories. The villain versus the bad guy and their reason for their animosity, or the hero and the bad guy's animosity, is usually pretty black and white. And there's usually an out for one of them, whether it's through forgiveness or acceptance or whatever. But this is one of those things where it doesn't matter which one's fully, completely accurate. It's too awkward of a situation to just sweep under the rug.
Depends on how big the rug is.
I mean, so I was just glad that they really expanded on some things that I wanted to know more about, especially from the prequels, from the original stories. Of the majority of the things that we hear when they are talking about and doing the Jedi training is, avoid the dark side, avoid this dark side, shut off your emotions, shut off your feelings. We hear this all the time, but now we're in this realm, in which case it's like, well, you actually need to explore that a little bit. And I'm really glad that we actually see Rey go to the dark side, starting that, and then she physically goes in there as a physical manifestation. And then as you can see her progressing through it, we see all the multiple copies of her in this actual scene, and she's snapping, and that's some awesome stuff. But actually what's happening is that she's physically going through this journey to come to terms with what's happened in her life. Yeah, she's in the dark side, but at the same time, it also is giving her the answer she needs to answer the question. And if there's a repressed memory or something that's repressed inside you, the only way to kind of get that, or at least kind of take the next step forward, you have to explore it. She was abandoned as a child. We still don't quite know the actual truth. So the only way to get that truth is but we have to open up that actual memory and let's see what actually happens. And the only person that's able to really empathize and stand eye to eye with her is Kylo. And it's also a very sad story what's happening there, because I guess his best father figure is actually Snoke, the only person that was there and kind of sort of believed in him and kind of trained him up to be that. And it's sad that you have the Jedi Master, you have Han Solo, that all has failed him, but Snoke was the person to kind of step in. And I like seeing those kind of elements because it makes a bit more sense of why he's going to go and turn, but his quote-unquote turn is not from, dark side to light, but it's away from the dark side, and he's just now in the middle, like I was talking about before, being that balance. So I like how they kind of expanded on that. They really talked about a bit of, this is what happens. Even the fact of, we get Finn's story, and Finn's story is, he's a sky trooper. He's a stormtrooper that ran away. He was raised from nothing. He knows nothing, and this is what he's training for. And so that's the story. We actually don't see this anymore. But then enters, Rose and her sister. And Rose was actually raised through slavery. And they have to do what these little kids did. And so now Finn sees a completely new story of, well, I'm not just the only one. We at this point in episode 7, we see that Rey was potentially abandoned, but Finn was also just kind of given away. But then Rose was just also in the same scenario. So it's nice to see these different characters kind of mash up and mesh up well. I like kind of seeing those to the point where now Finn has something that I still like Finn. I still want Finn to be like a badass. I do. He has like awesome moments. His fight scene and his fight scene at the end was pretty cool. But it's nice because he stopped running. All in episode 7, all he was doing was running away until he found that, okay, I need to try to save Rey. So Finn coming back, having something to fight for. He fight for Rose. Like, that's going to be something that's blossoming. He finally gets a chance to see Rey. That's awesome because he actually has that friend that's he still had the first connection with, but now he has like a completely different connection that he never had before. So he has friendship, he has leadership, he also has this love and like romantic relationship, and that's just awesome to see. And I'm glad they're also building on these characters, especially with Rey. We've already talked about her a lot, but I'm glad of seeing these characters build from one movie to the next. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I'm excited to talk about more of the stuff that we loved, but I'm also really pumped to expand and explore some things that we didn't like. Actually, I'm going to start with Dylan here because he talked about something that could have been better. In particular, we talked about the actual light jump scene. So I'm going to toss it over to Dylan and says, let's talk about that scene. And what about that scene you didn't quite like? And then other things you just didn't like about Star Wars.
First of all, that scene, it should have been Leia. Like, you had it right there in your hands. It's the perfect way to end her. Like, she should have just been like, no, bitch with the purple hair, you stay with these motherfuckers. You're going to lead them from here on out. Let me end this. And, like, that, I thought, come on. It was like a gimme to me.
Yo, Dylan. One thing on that one, just before I forget, that's Laura Dern, a.k.a. the scientist from Jurassic Park, was the purple-haired chick, which I didn't recognize at all until I saw it in the credits, but...
She got, like, way more attractive with age.
Yeah, fine wine. The second thing is that apparently the original plan for the trilogy was to have Han Solo be the old guidance in the first movie. Then Luke Skywalker was going to be the old guy in the second movie. And then Leia was going to pay off, and she would be the old guidance in the third one. And then she died after they filmed the whole movie. So I agree with you, that was would have been a great way to send her off. But she literally was not on the planet to do it. They didn't have the opportunity. I honestly didn't even think about that, and that's a really freaking cool idea. But they just didn't. It wouldn't have happened. She died. She did.
I understand what you're saying. I just still think it was. And it's not a huge miss. Like, to me, it was just like, hey, I would have liked it better this way. I think some of the harder parts for me were, man, the first hour of that movie was a struggle for me because it was a little slow going. It was real wordy, and it's not that I had a hard time like paying attention and like knowing what was going on. It was just like, hey, this is a Star Wars movie. I want to see some people kick the shit out of each other, and it was a lot of just like, I get it, Kylo, you got daddy issues. Luke, you got daddy issues. Like, figure out your fucking daddy issues, and then let's see Rey just like blow some shit up. And it took an hour and a half to get there, and yeah, absolutely. The last 45 minutes to an hour of that movie, I'm sitting on the edge of my seat, just excited. But I just thought it took a little while to get there, and I think we could have missed a couple things and been totally fine with it. I really didn't love. I know it was mentioned before. I think it was you, Brylan, who said that you loved Benicio del Toro's character, and I love. There's never been a bad movie that Benicio del Toro is like acting in. His role is good, whether the movie's bad or not. I think associate him to Saw Gerrera a lot is in like they just don't tell you a lot about him, and you don't understand the motives a lot behind him and what he's trying to do. Just like in Rogue One, you know, he's just, you understand like he's got a relationship, you know, with Jyn Erso's father, but that's it. And then like all of a sudden he's like a crazy psycho dude. He's like mixed emotion, and then in this movie, all of a sudden this guy just comes out of nowhere and, you know, is playing a pretty pivotal role in something. And I just like, I wish I knew more about him and kind of understood a little bit more about him. Also, I've never read any Star Wars comics or seen anything else. I don't know like what maybe this dude's done in other, you know, worlds of Star Wars, but I just wanted to know more about him.
Yeah.
The other loss for me, and it's not really a loss, and it's maybe more of along the lines of like I just wanted to know more. The Rose and Finn relationship, it's just like it kind of it leaves you hanging in a good way. You're like, oh, is this dude gonna hook up with Rey, or is this dude gonna hook up with Rose? Because like that's what the end of, you know, Force Awakens kind of leads you with, is like I don't know what exactly Rey and Finn's relationship is. They both need each other in these own kind of particular ways, but also have their own thing going on. And then her role kind of comes in, Rose comes in, and it's just like, she plays like an important role for Finn. I just don't know if her role really mattered in the movie in the grand scheme of things. I just want to know more about her. And I wanted them to kind of dive more into that relationship. And the other thing with Finn is like, I wanted Finn to die.
Right.
I wanted her to not save him. Like,
yep.
In his role in the movies so far, we're kind of to provide that little bit of comedic relief that Han gave you in the original trilogy. He just wasn't as good at it as Han was. And I think that the movie could go either way with him being a character going, you know, here on out. But I think it was a good time if you're going to like make a good scene in a movie where you kind of just grasp everybody and kind of give everybody that oh shit kind of moment. Like, let that dude fly right into that blaster and blow it up. But I do kind of like the fact that she saves him in a small little way of like, all right, he's about to do something so much more now. And now I'm like excited. I was never excited about Finn's character until he didn't die, and because I wanted him to die the whole time.
Yeah,
I agree. Oh, go ahead, Mocha.
Well, I was gonna say I'm pretty well aligned with you on that, Dylan. For Finn's character, that would have been a perfect place for him to die, because when we're introduced to him, he's somebody who's been forced into a war that he doesn't want to fight in, who runs away from it. And the people who help him run away from it happen to force him to join this exact same war, but from the other side. And he tries to run. Yeah, and he tries to run away from it in this movie too. And his second time running away, while he's on Canto Bight, he learns through Rose that there are other people that are enslaved because of the war, and that there's a reason to fight and pick a side. And so him actually killing himself in that moment would have been a really cool, complete full circle for his character. So I was right on board with you too. I was ready for him to die in that moment, but now I'm glad. I want to see who he is as someone who now has resolve as a fighter in this with a stake in the war.
It also gives...
you go, Warren.
Yeah, I think he's still like Finn. Finn is my character. Finn is my character. I really like Finn.
That's racist.
I really want more about him. No, it's because of racist. Duh. But the thing that I liked about this is he chose to left because he made a decision, and he had this pretty long speech in episode 7 of he's like, the first time I had a chance, I chose I'm not going to fight for them. I'm going to just run away, and then I ran into you, and nobody's ever looked at me like that. And Rey provided him hope to fight back. And so
but he was fighting for Rey. He wasn't fighting for the war. He was fighting for Rey.
Here's the thing. At this point, here's the reason why I think he was fighting back. At that point, he was fighting for Rey. Once they got Rey, he then chose to fight back on the planet Starkiller base. So this is his moment to then fight back, because he could have left. They could have left. And Han Solo was like, no, we can't leave. They need our help. So he chose to fight back. He stayed there. Rey was also like kind of hurt. He was still fighting for Rey, but at this point now, until he meets DJ, I feel it was this weird of wait, I'm not now. I'm kind of unsure. So now he's still like fighting for Rose. But then in this scene in this movie, when he started actually fighting Phasma, who is he fighting for? Because he actually doesn't need to fight her at all.
No,
He's
but
fighting for
that's the thing.
himself.
Yeah, he's finally made that decision. But in Episode 7, when he's on Starkiller Base, he is still only fighting for Rey. He didn't have a choice to leave Starkiller Base. He's not a pilot. He had no choice but to stay with Rey because she knew how to fly a plane.
Okay.
But
and also, he never would have beat Phasma. Let's be honest.
And also,
I hope she's not dead.
I hope she comes back like a piece of bacon, just like totally scarred, stuck inside her armor like Doctor Doom, just like pissed off. Like one giant bulging eye shooting out of her helmet.
Or just give her a baking costume to wear next.
I love the Phasma fan theory that like Phasma's not like a single person or like a single character. She is like an army that was created by the New Order, and like there are a bunch of her, and that's what they call them.
She's Negan.
Yes,
Rick.
but like apparently,
it's
like she is like the clone of Clone Wars.
Interesting.
That'd be
Like new Order clones or something.
Exactly. I thought I was like, that would actually be pretty interesting. I would watch a movie on that.
I'm going to toss it over to Brylan. What's some things you didn't like about Star Wars?
I would say the biggest thing that kind of brought me down was this movie did kind of suffer from the Disney sequelitis of let's just pack more stuff into it and make it bigger and badder than the previous movie. But we lose out on some cohesion of the story because of that. I think it's almost a requirement to see this movie twice because I don't see how you can pick up on everything in this movie that's going on because they did add a lot of stuff to it. And there's like moments that just we really don't need. They could have shaved off some scenes that were totally unnecessary. You don't need Poe and Rey having a meet and greet for the first time. I mean, I swear it'd be totally impossible for them to not say hi to one another up until this point.
That was like 15 seconds, though. That was, come on.
No,
that was 15 seconds. That wasn't a battle in Star Wars.
Yeah. Or I would also say like it also caused the pacing to be a little rough too. So this movie starts really intense. That small idea of them just being chased through space. I mean, it's totally from Battlestar Galactica, but it does create a nice moment of tension of this is a very desperate time for the rebels, but they find no way of continuing to drive that tension throughout the movie. They do have these rough stopping points where they have to unload a lot of exposition and then move on to the next scene to show you what's going to happen from what they just explained. And I would say the other thing that I felt was, just kind of rubbed me the wrong way was just the visual look of Canto Bright. I thought it didn't feel like it was a Star Wars type of scene. The CG on it felt very like shiny and sheeny, and I know that's kind of the point of it, but it felt like it looked exactly like something you would see in the prequel series, where it's all like just very obvious CG popping out. And I also thought when we saw the tracks, the racetrack, I thought we were about to see some pod races happening, and not kangaroo or human-faced kangaroos running around.
I'm tossing over to Abbott.
Yeah, I was surprised when I actually started making my list. There were some like nitpicky things that considering all the stuff that I was talking about before that they stuffed into this film that either just didn't make sense or was kind of rushed, considering, again, how long this movie is. Like, going back to the Finn Rose thing, that seemed to happen awful quickly. That she's like smooching him at the end of the movie. For me, that was kind of weird. There needed to be a little bit more development, maybe less like sucking on space alien booby on the seashore like scene, and then more, hey, here's Finn and Rose talking about, maybe like awkward tension, which could have been a 15-second scene of like, Rose looking over and like Finn's bending over and she's checking out his butt. Something weird like that. Like, it's simple. You just plant a seed. I also, speaking of Chewbacca, I think I needed a little bit more Chewbacca in this film for my liking. Considering that we lost Han, I think I needed a little bit more furry Wookiee. Finn also, I'm sorry, Warren, like he was, to me, like his story was the weakest. Racist. And he should have flown right into that laser. He should have died a hero, and then we shouldn't have had to worry about. I love John Boyega, but like his character was way useless in this film. Considering how cool he was in the last movie, I was made it more interesting.
We have had a hero. Maybe he'll live long enough to be a villain. Who knows?
Is that a line from Star Wars?
It's a line from
Star Wars 9.
The Star Wars Christmas special.
Oh, okay. My bad.
I can't stand Finn. That dude, in this movie, like, they just used him for comedic relief in any situation that they could and tried to crack. And, like, I know you touched on this, Mike, about, like, that comedic relief and, those moments where it's just like, oh, they crack a little joke. I love that in every movie except this movie. Because
the jokes in this one were awkward.
Not only were they awkward, but they were way too often. Like we were getting comedic relief every 15 minutes in this movie, and I'm just like, okay, like I get it. We got those little quirky moments with like a character like Han, where he's more so funny because he's so pretentious and arrogant, and like that's why he's comedic in so many points in the movie. And then you got a character that's Finn, who has no reason to be arrogant whatsoever, and he's like arrogantly comedic, and I don't like it at all.
It almost seemed like they were forcing all of his jokes. Like when they were in the elevator, I was waiting for like a gag fart or something, and everybody.
I know it was almost predictable. Like it was almost predictable.
It's more finding humor out of a moment that may or may not have been set up for comedy versus something that's like blatantly comedic, just not pulling it off. And fun fact: if you switch Jar Jar and Finn, it's still the same character.
Same character.
That's racist.
That's why I hate them both.
I'm not even gonna go. Not even gonna.
You can't even right now, Warren.
I just
do a pumpkin spice latte.
I mean, fuck all you people who don't like Finn because you are wrong. But
we have better stuff to do in this film.
Well, I think, and it was more along the lines of, if you have a chance, and I think, Abbott, you've seen it once, go into the movie again. And it's tough to say that, hey, spend $40, right, to get a fully understanding of this Star Wars movie, because that's 2 movie tickets, especially if you live in New York, Mocha. Abbott, I do agree with a lot you're saying, not the Finn stuff, but I do agree with, like, there was a lot of moments in the same thing you said, Dylan. Like, it was to the point where it's like, well, you're changing up, and it's a drastic change from episode 7 to episode 8 of a lot of moments that we can use silence, and silence is golden. You've heard that a lot. You actually get a lot from silence, but they filled it with a lot more comedic beats and moments to try to further things along to make it more enjoyable to watch. But sometimes that does take away from character development, and sometimes it changes how I should feel about a scene. If I'm learning about the Force for the first time from a person, right? The first time you learn about the Force in a lot of these other movies, it's not a comedic moment. This movie is a comedic moment, and it's kind of played for. Is definitely could be a hindrance, and that's something I've always looked out for. And even when I watch it the second time, I was like, well, they could have done this a little differently so that it's more impactful. But they explained it in episode 7, and they re-explained it in episode 8. And honestly, I think they redid that twice just to tell people, hey, it's not about the midichlorians. So let's forget about that shit and throw that away. So if they explain the Force again in this next movie, I will be very surprised, but I don't think they will. So I see that.
Yeah, I mean, like, mostly in regards to the humor, I don't think it was all, like, delivered poorly. I just feel like sometimes the jokes didn't land at all. Like, even the beginning when, like, Poe flies up and is talking to General Hicks, the guy on the bomber, and he has that moment where he's like,
General Hicks.
Tell your mom I said hi. Like, and he calls him General Hugs. It's like, okay, we're like 2 minutes into the movie, and all of a sudden it's like a buddy comedy between, like, what's going on right now?
Oh, no, that's a character. That Poe Dameron character is another sort of derivative of Han Solo, because
you're right.
The opening movie, the opening of number 7, is like, you talk, am I supposed to talk? I'm supposed to talk. You said talk. What's happening? What are we doing here? And we know that that's like a funny moment of it. So I understand, and I got that. But all the other characters, that wasn't quite there for them. Like, especially Finn has a lot of faces that he has like this surprise face. Next time you see it, count how many times Finn has a "did that just happen?" face. I think it's pretty funny.
But then maybe he shouldn't say anything, and he should just make dumb faces. Maybe that's what Finn is.
Wow.
With it.
But also, like, there's other moments.
Here,
there's other moments in the film, like one of my favorite parts beyond like Rubber Yoda is the part where the iron is coming down. Like, the iron is coming down, and you're supposed to think it's a spaceship landing, but then you're like, oh no, shit! It's literally just an iron ironing clothes.
That took me till the second time to figure that one out.
That part was well written and well thought up, and then some of like the jokey dialogue I just didn't like. But beyond that, also going back to the Rubber Yoda, who's the MVP of this movie for real, why don't we get like Rubber Obi-Wan and Rubber Anakin Skywalker? Like, they could be Force ghosts there too. They could totally be there.
But they're not there yet in their life. Like,
but if they could be digitally inserted into remastered versions of past movies, why can't they show up to Luke Skywalker and say, "Hey, yo, what up? Why don't you quit being a grumpy old man?"
Because Yoda was the actual teacher of Luke. I think that's an awesome teaching moment at that time to say, hey, at one point, like, when all hope is lost, you see the only sort of beacon of hope. And we hear this word hope a lot, especially here in Rogue One. You see the only person that really kind of pushed you and kind of go there. Even Mocha even talked about it before of Obi-Wan he was not the teacher of Luke. Yoda was the teacher of Luke. And if Luke is having doubts of himself about everything, the only person that you can hear that is Yoda. And then when he says that, the Jedi Master is what the student achieves to be, or it's what the student kind of goes past and like what that student becomes.
Surpass at one time.
That's Yoda's the only person that's able to do that moment. And so that's the only time that all we need is Yoda there. Because Anakin doesn't really make sense why he's there.
I'm just saying, I think it would be great to have like an Allen Guinness. That was Obi, right? Old Obi.
Yeah.
And then like a
flying.
But like they could Grand Moff Tarkin do like a digital. He's a ghost anyway. He's gonna be a holographic ghost. And then maybe like a James Earl Jones with no arms or no legs, kind of floating there. I think that would be great. I think they could also come in and just give him. I'm super serious. That would have been great. Yoda was great, but I think if you're gonna go to 10, you might as well go to 11. That's all I'm saying.
All right, King Friday.
Yeah. What's up?
Oh no! All I was gonna say to your comment about you're right. Yoda is Luke's teacher, but I think Obi-Wan taught him the most important lesson, and that's like what it comes back to in the Force is giving yourself to the Force.
I'm gonna toss it over to Blewitt. Blewitt, tell me about some of the things that Mocha's wrong about.
First of all,
fucking rubes.
I think so two big things. Someone mentioned it in the wins that they kind of liked the open-endedness of where this film was going. I kind of didn't. Like, the second part of a trilogy needs to have you can have room for like twists, but you need to have direction. And literally, is like the next movie going to be about the little kid becoming Force sensitive? Is it just going to be Kylo and Rey? Is like, what are they going to do with Princess Leia? Because obviously, like, you got to talk. You got to think about that. Like, where does Poe and Finn fit into this? Like, There's just all these. They don't really have a place to go, but because they have everywhere to go. And I would have loved to see a little bit more of a pointedness there. The other thing is that Rose felt like a focus group character. She literally just felt like they picked a bunch of people in a room. They're like, all right, we need a new Star Wars character. Well, all right, let's make her a woman. All right, cool. Yeah, that's good. Well, she's got to be like an ethnic minority, even though that makes no sense because in space there's no such thing as ethnicities. They're not even human. And she's got to be like spunky, but like a sensitive side. And so like they put all that into one character and made it completely disingenuous. Like you have all those things that are. You have the quips from all these characters. You have representation, from the big three, fairly well done. And then you just kind of like added this extra character with no real substance that just maligned Finn for an entire movie. Couldn't stand her.
If space Asians don't exist, then what's up with Chirrut in Rogue One? 30 years before this movie even starts.
True.
No, I'm
Space
saying Asia doesn't exist.
Space Asian.
Asia's not a concept. They just like they're from some island in
Corellia. Yeah, that's why they
Corellia.
never call her Asian.
Oh, that's Maz. Just 100 years later.
No. I'm not specifically saying that because, but like about the character in the movie, I'm saying that about the decision to make the character in some exact. She felt so unbelievably.
I know what you're trying to say.
She felt forced by an executive board, not a creative decision.
I agree. And I'm with you. Like, I don't see the need for that character.
And she...
her character doesn't really... her character's purely...
It's a sideshow. It's like a side act to get you to not think about something else that's going on.
To give Finn's character a different direction. But, their storyline, their adventure they go on to be able to get the plans they need, that... It's the weakest part of this film, and so a lot of things just don't play well during that time with Finn and Rose.
I mean, you can have a plan that fails, but don't make it half the movie.
Warren, did you go yet?
No, not yet. So there was a lot of things. There was some things I didn't like about the movie. I think we talked about some of the ones, especially that I really wanted more from DJ. I feel like his characters kind of popped up out of nowhere. I felt a lot the love story kind of came up out of nowhere that we need a little bit more with kind of Finn. That was kind of a bummer. I wanted some more from Luke. I love the fact that we given something that we've never seen this before. So Luke does it, and he kind of sends himself to do an actual lightsaber battle that actually not there. Did everybody else pick up on the fact that this wasn't until the second time I watched it? During that lightsaber battle, Luke had a blue lightsaber instead of the green one that we saw beforehand, knowing that he was a projection. He wasn't actually real.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there were two things there. It was that gave it away, the blue lightsaber, which I didn't notice the first time through. But also, while everyone else who runs around on Crate kicks up the white dust and leaves red trails, and Luke doesn't leave any.
His haircut was also different too.
Jedi.
Salt. That's
also, he doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's a good point. I actually didn't pick up on that, so good call up for that. So I wanted a bit more from Luke, and I think that they have always toyed.
Sorry to tell you.
Yeah, they have always toyed. Yeah, right. They have always toyed with this idea of. It was more along the lines of the Jedi idea. Just because you have this power doesn't mean you have to use it. This power is not supposed to be used for gain, pleasure, whatever. It's only supposed to be used to protect the good.
Well, yeah, but doesn't Luke kind of give you the impression that if you don't use it, you lose it?
Yeah.
I mean, he clearly didn't lose it. We've never seen anyone except for Yoda do a force projection like that in the Clone Wars animated series. So, I mean, obviously, he didn't lose it. His body wasn't able to handle it, but he still had his control over the Force.
Stella got his groove back?
Stella got her groove back.
I wanted to see more from Luke. I was really hoping, like, we haven't seen this dude in so long. All we see him do is a pretty cool moment to blow up the entire sort of like shelter that Rey was staying on the island, and then do that. But I of wanted to see him do a little bit more. I'm kind of bummed that you didn't get that.
Well, what's kind of cool. I agree. I see where you're coming from, Warren. And I agree. Like, I would have loved to see Luke do a million different things, but it's cool from a sort of like a lore perspective, because the point of the Jedi is that, and Yoda teaches this, like says this a lot during, I can't remember if it's when he's training Luke, but he says that a Jedi is meant to use his power to defend, not to attack. Jedi are never supposed to be aggressors, and that was part of the fall of the Jedi in the prequels during the Clone Wars. They became generals for the Republic Army, and they lost their way, and they lost their connection to the Force. So for the first, and the same thing with Luke, like we saw Luke be powerful throughout the original trilogy, but he became closer and closer to the dark side as he used his abilities more and more to fight. So to see him finally reconnect with the Force, and to find his complete and perfect center by using the Force, not to actually fight because he wasn't there, but just to give the other people a chance to leave, was actually really poetic, because he died finally reaching that level, that height of being a true Jedi that the other Jedi before him weren't able to do.
Yeah, and I also think it makes a lot more sense, because if you think of it, Luke, even though he's looking down on himself, I mean, his physical body has not trained to be a Jedi Master level Jedi for a while. So he's going to use the next best thing, which is his mind and the will of the Force.
I appreciate that he gave himself a haircut.
Yeah.
Those things are important. Yeah.
I also dig that Rey's robes and his robes at the end are kind of grayish, kind of mixing both light and dark.
I think
I didn't pick up on that, Brylan.
Yeah, that's good. The only other things that I was kind of bummed about was when there's a lot of sacrifice, there's a lot of death. There is a lot of death in this movie that is completely just washed away. We open up with the fact that, because Oscar Isaacs or Poe's character is such a hothead, he destroys half their fleet, their bombing unit, all this stuff, just to destroy something that they didn't need to destroy. And we held on the moment there. But then could anybody even tell me Rose's sister's name?
Doesn't
I think
matter.
it was like Paige.
Jackie.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Who cares?
Right? Thank you, Blewitt. It doesn't matter. Because we had this moment with there's all the other people are happening, all these people are either dying, and then we see, fast forward, we see that, Snoke was trying to show Rey these people still dying, but we don't get anything from that. And I understand that's the part of war, but at the same time, there has to be an importance of these lives that are lost, whether it's a memorial, whether it's something kind of told about, like, hey, we fucked up multiple times. Arguably because of Finn and Poe and Rose, all those people died that they didn't need to die.
You sound Canadian.
Oh, thank you.
But I mean, we got everything we needed to from Rose explaining her sister's backstory. She's like, my sister was a pilot. She believed in the cause. She died in our stupid assault on this thing. Like, that's all you really need to know about her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but do you need a moment to actually explain who she is?
This movie was long enough.
I didn't even need that. Honestly, showing that the lady who died in the ship was also space Asian and also had one side of a gold trinket, that's all I needed to know about her character. Like, that's all I needed to know about her character.
Space Agent X.
Nice. I'm done. Yeah.
All right. So most of my misses, and I feel like everybody else's too, fall under one general canopy, and that is that this is clearly a Disney film. More so than Episode 7, definitely more so than Rogue One. This is the most Disney Star Wars film we've ever seen. And I feel like there are a lot of good things that come out of that, but also a lot of bad, including everything we've already said. The dialogue was just way too on the nose. So much of the lines were just telling you exactly what you needed to know about the given scene, or exactly how you needed to feel. And there wasn't any sort of subtlety or anything like that whatsoever, which kind of threw me off, and I didn't really enjoy that much. I'm not one for... Alright, so I'm all about suspension of disbelief, okay? I'm not one for bringing up physics when it comes to a movie like this, but there are two things that I couldn't get past that just killed me in this movie.
But I'm going to bring up physics. Hold up.
No, hold on, no, because this is important.
Hey, I don't give a shit about physics, but hold on. I studied some fucking physics.
This is my Kanye moment, alright? So, we've got, during the space chase, we've got the Supremacy chasing down the Raddus capital ship. All right. Now, all the ships in the fleet are flying in one direction, right? And they're flying at full speed. Whenever a ship runs out of gas, they shouldn't just list backwards. It's space. They should just continue on forever in the direction that they're pointed, because there's no friction and there's no gravity and there's no reason for them to just tumble backwards. Like, that was just really silly to me. They should just keep moving.
I love how when they come out of warp speed, it's just a dead stop. Like, they just hit the e-brake. They don't move.
I wish we had the video on that so we could see Dylan's perfect example of, like, braking in the car. Yeah, like, that drove me crazy.
That chase scene is really big, and I know you've seen this multiple times, Mocha. That chase scene or the chase trope is really big in Japanese animation. Mm-hmm. And that's a huge thing that they typically use. There's a countdown, there's a timer that's used with the chase or something that's happening to build suspense. And so I joked about it. I think I was talking to somebody, maybe Abbott, I'm pretty sure Ryan Johnson used to watch or definitely reads a good amount of like Japanese stuff or animation, because this was right out of that. This was literally plucked right out, especially with the swords and stuff like that and the fighting. This was plucked out of there, and he used that trope again. So the moment that he's like, how much fuel do they have? Oh, they have less than half. Oh, they're uncritical. Or they're about to, they just kept building onto that. I was like, oh, that's hilarious. I've seen this multiple times. So, but I do agree with you, like, on the physics things of it could have been done a bit better.
Yeah, I mean, like, they should just kept drifting along, unless maybe like an asteroid hit one of them, and that should gently change its trajectory. I don't know. Either way, it just annoyed me that they listed backwards. It's fucking space. Also, another thing with the space chase is after Supremacy is chasing the Raddus capital ship, it's firing these shots at it over and over, right? Trying to ping away at its shields. Cool. Guess what? You can't lob a shot in space because there's no gravity to make it arc. You shoot a fucking, like, laser beam or a cannon in one direction, and it travels in that direction and hits something. You don't just lob shot after shot. That made no sense.
It's actually way easier in space if you think about it.
To lob something? No. What's gonna?
No, I'm saying you don't have to lob. You just just aim at it and then you hit it.
Exactly. Like, I get that
There's
they want
no
to make
depth perception involved.
They wanted to make it look dramatic, and I get that. But god damn it, like, there's no lobbing in space.
It's like, hey, you don't have tanks in space. It's not how this fucking works.
You don't have to lead your shots or anything.
Exactly.
And, like, I don't care, especially disbelief or whatever, but half of the movie was just watching that ship lob fucking shots at the capital ship.
That's been every Star Wars movie, though, so...
I've never seen them lob a shot in space. It's always been dead-on shots.
Yeah, it's always been dead-on shots.
Oh, no. I mean, stormtrooper targeting is even, like...
Yeah, but
if that's in a hallway, there's artificial gravity on a spaceship. I'm talking about ship-to-ship battles. And
was the Tanta 4? I mean, some of those shots went over its nose.
I don't know. The best argument I could hear is maybe a Y-wing bomber. But then you could argue that they propelled them downward or something like that. It's still going in a straight line at the very
end. Or the A-wing in Return of the Jedi that actually did barrel rolls into a bridge.
Oh, yeah. But yeah.
On fire in space.
Okay, you got any misses left?
I do. So,
Here.
There shouldn't have been... You're right, there was too much humor in this movie. In my opinion, I'm fine with humor everywhere else. There should have been zero humor in the space chase scenes. That should have been dire and dramatic and desperate.
It's like, hey, we're trying not to die. Let's not make fucking jokes.
Everyone that's left in the Resistance is dying one after another. There should be no time for jokes whatsoever. The lack of a sense of urgency in the space chase scene specifically really got to me throughout it and kept pulling me out of the film. Also, and as you can see, a lot of my issues come to the space chase. But I understand the narrative purpose of the space chase, but can someone explain to me why the Supremacy couldn't just accelerate? Like, that is the capital ship in the entire fucking New Order Navy. And
easy answer.
The radish is faster.
Gas is expensive.
It wasn't faster. It wasn't faster. They were
gas prices.
They're lighter. They said that they're lighter, and that's why they faster and we can't keep up. So this is the distance. They established that pretty early on before the space started.
One thing.
So I'll give them that, though. But if that's the case, their TIE fighters, like, sure, they were worried that TIE fighters would get too far in the distance, but we also knew that the front of the ship was completely unarmed with shields. So why not just sacrifice a couple of the soldiers that you don't care about anyway because they're the fucking First Order? Send them on a suicide mission to ping the front of the ship twice, and the whole thing goes down. Like, it was that was
Again, movie.
My big thing is you have a method of transportation that takes you from one place to another in literally the blink of some light. Why don't you just hyperdrive a couple Star Destroyers like 400 feet in front of them, have them turn around, and then they're just trapped? Like, you can make a box if you want.
You guys got some pro tips for the space Nazis.
Yeah, it's yeah.
And again, I get the point of it. It's all for the narrative. It's all to create this drama, but it just seemed like a little forced just for the sake of having it. Ultimately, I think at the end of the day, this was the most Star Trek Star Wars film I've seen ever.
Yes.
It felt very Star Trek, and I don't, like, that's not a bad thing because I love me some Star Trek, but I do love the fact that Star Trek and Star Wars are inherently different in their feel. And so it's a little interesting. I don't know how I feel about the fact that they're starting to blend together. But we'll see where that goes. But this is definitely the most Star Trek Star Wars film we've had yet.
Is that a negative?
Yes. Oh, 100%.
Because you don't like Star Trek because you're a terrible person?
Did you not listen to anything I just said? I said I love Star Trek.
I know, I'm kidding.
Okay.
Well, the next film, Episode 9, is going to be a crossover. You heard that, right?
God damn it, Abbott.
A cross-dresser?
Yes. That too.
So, we're excited. It's been 6 hours since we started recording. But let's go into a bit of a final thoughts, final conclusions. I'm going to start with the prettiest person I know on the face of the earth. Mocha, what is your final thoughts? I think I hurt everybody else's feelings there. What's your
I thought it was going to be Blewitt.
I know.
No, we all know that's not happening.
So, Mocha, final thoughts and conclusions of Star Wars, The Last Jedi.
First of all, thank you. I know there's some pretty tough competition here, so I'm glad to get this award.
You earned this superlative.
Ultimately, this film is a huge fuck you to anybody who thinks that their headcanon owns the creative direction of the franchise. If the movie made you mad, you don't remember the originals well. It excellently sets the stage for a new generation of fans to experience a new story while giving old-time fans a lot of meat to dig their teeth into. And honestly, I think those new fans deserve that chance. And I think us older fans deserve a couple twists and turns. So overall, I think this is a great film. And I also think that if you're sitting on the fence about it, or even if you felt like you enjoyed it, go see it a second time, because I don't think this film can be properly digested in one go.
I couldn't agree with you more. I want to toss it over to the mouth of the South, Brylan.
So up until now, I've seen all of Rian Johnson's films, and they've all been great to me. And I would say, even though this is probably his weakest film, it's still a great movie. So the guy has continues to be able to entertain people, and he's done it on a much, much larger scale this time. So it's a fantastic Star Wars movie. I'm not quite sure where it falls in the order of which ones are good or not, but it's definitely something I feel like I need to see again in order to get everything that happened in the movie. And it was also great to see Luke's green lightsaber, which is far superior to Anakin's crappy blue lightsaber. So,
amen to that.
Sure. I really wish that I hope we get to see it again, because it looked badass. It looks kind of long, but it still looked pretty badass.
Yeah.
Abbott.
I really enjoyed the movie more than I thought I would. I thought I was just going to be like, oh, hey, like my reaction to the last couple, like they were enjoyable, but they were just like, oh, hey, it's another Star Wars film. This one, like I said, there's a lot of stuff in there. I want to go back and see it again because I've only seen it the once. But it just makes me more excited going forward. Like, how are they going to resolve this trilogy? Who else is going to be introduced? Who's going to die? Are they going to shave Chewbacca? Things like that. So I'm just really excited for the rest of the Star Wars to just kind of eject itself all over our eyeballs.
Ejaculate itself or eject?
I said eject. It's a little different. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
It was a setup, and you all fell for it.
But yeah, I was very aroused by this film.
Perfect. Dylan, the person everybody hates.
As always. I mean, I can definitely align with a lot of you guys. It's a great movie. I'm also with Brylan on the fact that this is the worst, movie that Rian Johnson he's ever done. But I also think you're looking at a guy that has been doing movies comparable to like Stuart Little and like made them really good, and then given the opportunity to work on something like Star Wars and made it his own and made it something really cool and special in his own way. I think that is incredible, and not a lot of people can go from doing a C-list movie and a movie that nobody's ever even gonna see to something like Star Wars. Like, I mean, that's pretty incredible. I also think that I agree with Mocha where it's just like, if you don't like this movie, you really need to look back at the rest of the movies and kind of remember why you like those movies. And it really does make a difference. Like, if you're 50, 60 years old watching this film, it's not going to make you feel the same way that A New Hope did when you were 10 years old. Like, you're not going to feel like that, I can't tell you anything right now that I love right now that I didn't love more when I was 13. Like, everything was cooler when you're a teenager. Like, yeah, like, I jerked off 20 times a day when I was 13, but I only do it, like, 3 or 4 times a day now. It's, like, it's not as cool. Like, it feels good, but it's not as cool.
You've really matured, man.
And that's it.
I'm gonna toss it.
I'll drink to that.
Sip to that. Blewitt.
Yeah, I think that at its core, the highs from this movie were absolutely incredible. The lows were on par with Phantom Menace. It really ran. There wasn't a ton that I was just like mediocre on. It was either I was like so unbelievably stoked or just so unbelievably disappointed. I think overall though, the stoked overpowered the much like Rey's character being tempted by the dark side, the stokedness won out over the not so good.
Yeah, so I would say lasting thoughts for mine is this movie, like we had said it before, definitely takes about a couple of viewings. I'm probably going to watch it again sometime next week. So that'll be my third time. But I loved it. I love a lot of this movie. I loved just about every part of this movie, even after I saw it for the second time. It's still going to go down as, I think right now between this and Rogue One is going to be like my favorite Star Wars films so far. I don't agree with the whole Rian Johnson being a director and stuff like that. I really don't agree with a lot of the trash that you guys have been said, but that's your opinions. I'm just kidding. I do agree with some of the things, but I definitely like this movie more than I like Looper. And so that's like arguably like a thing that this is better than another piece of Rian Johnson's work. And with that, we are the Down in Front Podcast, the official podcast of Down in Front Podcast.com. Thank you so much for everybody being on here. I'm super excited for everybody just kind of hanging out, drinking with us. It's 4 a.m. right now, so I appreciate you kind of staying up so late. I'm going to toss it to Abbott and says, Abbott, where can we find more of your work? And what you doing?
Oh, I am currently working on the album artwork for a band called Maya Noose, actually. While you guys have been making these beautiful points, you'll be seeing that very soon. You can also find me all over the internet because I sell nudes. And yeah, so if you Google my name, that's mostly what you'll find.
Do explain.
Exactly, none of them are mine. ShavedWookies.com, you'll find the admin. It's the theme of the evening. Thanks so much for having me, for your boners, for everyone.
And with that beautiful segue, I'm going to toss it over to Mike the Shredder Blewitt. Where can you find more of your...
Yeah, so we're currently working on an album based on the drawings of Andrew Abbott. It's kind of like Precious, but not really. It's more fart jokes.
Instantly.
But what was I gonna say? Things. Check us out. We're playing in January, first week, somewhere in that. Not the first, because we're not cool. Yeah. Also, if you want to see my streaming channel, you can check us out at twitch.com/Jesse Shaves His Wookie.
Jesse Rant? Is there another Jesse?
The one and only Jesse.
Yeah,
we give out Jesse's email in every episode.
Jesse Kovacs.
Wrong, Jess.
I'm not gonna go there.
Although I'd imagine.
Hey, so Rylan, where can you find more of your work?
You can find me eating fried chicken in front of live chickens on Twitter at Brilund, BRILUND.
Yes!
I'll also, I have an Instagram. It's I am Brilund. I'll post random photos and memes and sometimes many movie and TV reviews when I get around to it. I'm also the host of the Gamescast, twitch.tv/Downfront Podcast. Been on a little bit of a hiatus during this holiday season, but I'm redoing I'm redoing the structure and the scheduling of it. So once I get the first week schedule of it ready, we will be back.
Hell yeah.
Nice, as always, great to see your face. Dylan, the Cochran, where can you find more of your work?
I mean, I usually see appointments between about like 10 a.m. and 9 p.m. Cambridgeside Galleria. If you got a broken iPhone or, maybe your 2011 MacBook Pro is having some video card issues, I could really fucking kick the shit out of that. Also, if you need a guitar player or a bass player, I know a guy or two, and it ain't Warren.
I'm the vocalist. I'm sorry. I do the vocals. So thank you for letting us know where you can find more.
Was I supposed to have a sign off like?
No.
And you stay classy, San Diego.
Mocha Mike, where can you find more of your work?
Yes, you can find me on Twitter, bare knuckle boxing neckbeards at Mocha Mike LI. As the Lord intended.
Backdoor slut slide.
Unfortunately, I'm not listed at Mocha Mike because the man who has that username was frozen in carbonite before you could deactivate his account. And now it's just gone forever. So until then, it's Mocha Mike LI. You can also find me on Instagram at Mocha Mike. That's where I post my photography work. I'd love to get some feedback there. As well as check me out on Medium, medium.com/@MochaMike, where I post some long-form reviews of the movies we talk about here.
And I am Warren. You can find all of our work here, downandfrontpodcast.com. We have Twitter, Facebook, Patreon, Reddit, email, Instagram, literally everything that we can think of. Please love us. Please subscribe us. Please rate us on iTunes. That'll be amazing. Thank you so much for hanging out, just kind of listening with us. We were really excited to record this as quickly as possible, especially got the holidays as well. My birthday's coming up, so happy birthday to me. Boom, I gave you there. And we are the Down in Front Podcast. Thank you so much, Dylan. Thank you, Abbott. Thanks for hanging out with us. And we will say so long, farewell. Avise, get drunk.
May the force be with
force
you.
With
Let's
you.
go Bitcoin.
Go meet.
That's one thing I didn't like about that movie. They actually said that May the Force be with you too many times.
Yeah.
That one at the end where it's like
all
Carrie
the Star
Fisher
Wars
and what's her
movies where
face.
they don't.
They made fun of saying "May the Force be with you."
Yeah, it was a bit of a joke on it. I was like, wow, you guys just kind of shit on that.